Hello everyone, it's Christine here and I am back for our stitch along, and we are going to be working on Ghiordes knot, which is also known as turkey work or turkey stitch or single knot tufting. So it's a series of very closely worked loops that you can either leave as loops or you can cut and trim them. You can also comb and fluff out the loops, or once they're cut, fluff them out, and you can work it in wool or in thread. I'm going to be using this big ball of variegated purple, I think it's a crochet, quite a thick crochet yarn. And I'm going to be working on this fabric, which I actually used for the vase in one of the previous stitches, but I had it out on my desk and I thought, oh, I can do the center of these little sort of flower shapes in the turkey work. So I've already done one down here, and I've cut those little loops to form some lovely little tufts, and it's a very textural piece, and yeah, you can use them in the middle of Suffolk puffs to decorate them, or in the middle of flowers, etc. So what we're going to do is come through from the front of the fabric. So we're not putting a knot in our thread this time. Get rid of that here. Actually, I should be coming through from, because I want to start in just working this little circle down here. So come through from the front of the fabric here. And then I'm going to use that outer ring as my sort of measurement area for how long to leave my loops, or in this case, the first one is a cut tuft. And so I'm now going to bring my needle slightly to the left of that first stitch. I'm holding that tuft out so that it doesn't pull through. So I'm just sort of making sure it pulls at the back, but that I get left with this little tuft sitting out to that point that I made with my needle there. So you want to keep it that length. And now I'm going to take my needle back in on the other side of the tuft. So I'm putting a little back stitch across the base of the tuft to hold it in place and pulling through. Then I'm going to bring my needle up right where that first tuft is, behind the back stitch. Going to pull my thread through, just holding onto the tuft, because you want the your little bit to stay as it is. And then I'm going to take a stitch a little bit further, sort of one thread width further along, so leaving a little gap. And if you're working in a line, you can just sort of do this straight along. I'll be rotating around the circle to form my sort of circle center bit. Again, I'm going to make sure my loop is just out to the perimeter of that outer circle, and then I'm going to pop my needle back up next to the outer bit of the loop. So in that little space that we left, I'm going to hold on to that outer loop and the other little bit, and then I'm going to do another back stitch over that outer bit of the loop. So essentially we're anchoring that bit down now. Then I'm going to pop up right behind the back stitch and right next to that previous loop. So about there. And I'm going to hold on to the loops just so we're not pulling those through. Make sure I'm still, I'm not leaving any loops at the back. And then I'm going to jump forward a thread's width forward around the circle, so leave a little gap. Going to hold on to the loops at the base just to sort of keep them out of the way as we pull the thread through. I'm going to measure it so that it's about the right height. So I'll just pull it through a tiny bit more. And then I'm going to pop up in that little gap that I left between the back stitch and the outer bit of the loop. Pull through, make sure haven't left any loops at the back. And then I'm going to put my next back stitch on the other side of that furthermost loop. So I'm putting a back stitch over that loopy bit. And then I'm going to pop my needle up next to and behind the back stitch. So next to the other loop and behind the back stitch. So it's anchored down. And then I'm just going to jump forward one thread width, so leave a little gap on the perimeter of my circle, and again pull my loop through to get a loop of the size that I want. You'll sometimes find that where the thread's twisty, they twist around as well. And if you do happen to pull it too far forward, like I did there, you can just use the back of your needle to get it to sit flat and to pull it back up. So again, I'll just make sure it's where I want it before I put my back stitch in. And I've got a bit of the thread from the back coming through, but fix that up. And then I'm going to put my back stitch in place to hold it. And if you want, you can actually bring your needle through at this point before you pull your back stitch flat, if you want to sort of get your needle in before you pull that through, and then you can just pull your back stitch through from the back like that, and you've already got your needle where you want it to be for your next stitch. So I have seen some videos do it that way. So I'm just using that outer perimeter. If you were doing this on and didn't have a fabric that had a circle, you could just draw yourself an outer circle, so you've kind of got something to measure against, or you can just do it by eye, which would be fine as well. But you can always trim, if you're cutting your loops, you can always trim them further once you've cut them. So again, just jumping forward one sort of thread's width to leave a gap. And then just measuring our little tuft, or our loop in this case, that will become a tuft. And then putting our little back stitch in over the base of that furthermost bit of the loop to hold it in place. And then just popping up next to the other loop, and then jumping forward. Will sometimes get a bit twisted, but you can just hold it while you sort of get it adjusted to the right size. And then I'm going to put in my next little back stitch. Tangly, but that's okay, we'll sort it out as we go. And I'll probably fit one more in, I think. So again, just popping up next to that previous loop and then popping over there, getting my loop to where I want it to be, and then putting my little holding back stitch in. So there we are, and you get your little circle on the back with your little holding stitches, and then we can continue round and do an inner round as well. So again, I'm just going to pop through on the inside, and then I'm going to hold my loop up here and jump forward one thread's width to create a little gap. I'm going to get my loop to still be about the same. I can probably do these ones slightly smaller, and then I'm going to pop my needle up in that little gap between the two stitches, and I'm going to put my little holding stitch in, little back stitch, and then I'm going to bring my needle up behind the back stitch, making sure I'm not getting a loop in the back. Oops, what have we got done here? What have we done here? Got some thread caught. We've got a little knot. Now we're right. It is worth just periodically checking that you're not getting something untoward. I think I might have missed one loop there, but we'll just recreate the loop. Done an extra back stitch, but that's not the end of the world by any means. So we're just going to get our loop to the size that we want it, which requires us just to hold it in place, and then we're going to put our little anchoring back stitch in place. Just going to pull that one out a bit more because it got slightly tightened as I was pulling it. That's done, and we've caught. That one was just looking a bit caught, but that's okay. And then we're going to pop up to our next loop. Pull it through to about the size we want it, which looks about, that looks fine. Put our little back stitch in. And then we're going to pop up next to that previous loop. Oops, I think I just undid my back stitch then, so we'll just put our back stitch back in, and then I'll just have to be careful not to come out that same hole that was the back stitch hole. Oh, sorry, just bumped the camera stand, apologies. Got a bit overexcited there. So as you circle into the centre, it definitely gets tighter working, but you can still see where you've got to put your little back stitches in. And then you can still see where you need to pop up when you're doing your loop. Just go forward a smidge more. Pull through to get the loop. Like that. And then put the little back stitch in. Then pop up behind the back stitch, put another loopy loop in. Put the stitch in to anchor that loop down. So I hope you're all having, oops, I pulled that one too far through. Let's just get that fixed up. Hope you're all having a great day or a great evening. I think we're almost getting there, but I'll put a few more in because I can still see a little bit of white space. Sunday evening here, but you'll be watching this at least a week later, I think. So I've just been getting a few done in advance. Take the pressure off a bit with work being very busy, which I know I've mentioned and won't mention again because it's Sunday, and hey, don't have to think about work on a Sunday. So I think that's enough for there. So I'll just tie it off at the back by passing it back through itself. Try not to catch the tail. Put a little knot in the back and snipperoo. So you can either leave it with its loopy bit, so you can actually sort of make your own textural flower out of it, but otherwise you can cut your loops as simple as this. You can obviously use much smaller scissors, but these are my good fabric scissors. You just want to find all your loops. Loop still there, hiding out. Is there one still hiding out here? Yes. Okay, and then you can either leave it that sort of more organic length, or you can get all your endy bits together and you can trim them evenly if you want, because as you can see, there's some that are longer than others. So you can even take them down further than that if you want. Usually I'll just sort of hold it like that and then just trim it relatively evenly, And then that way you've got your nice little centre to your flower. And so, yeah, it looks particularly effective as flower centres, but also in the centres of Suffolk puffs as well. And you can further sort of, if you want them more fluffy, you can just use your needle, particularly if it's a wool or even this sort of a thread, to just sort of comb out the individual strands and get something really nice and sort of fluffy happening. So you can even just use your fingers a bit to extra fluff it up. So there you go. That is our turkey work or Ghiordes stitch. I hope you have fun having a play with those. They're lovely elements to feel in your work. Take care, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow for glove stitch. Bye, everyone.